Thank you. If any of you have ever heard of the accountant in bankruptcy, apart from the one member of my team who's actually here, I'll be pleasantly surprised. I suppose, it's a great delight for us to be able to help support this conference, but we're partly here, I suppose, as a cautionary tale. So, the accountant in bankruptcy, out, big robes, big chain of office and all of that. I'm an officer of the court responsible for awarding applications for bankruptcy put forward by debtors themselves, and then for administering most bankruptcies in Scotland. So I'm here to say a bit about what happens when things really go wrong. And things can really go wrong. Last year I had to instruct 89 evictions, throwing families out of their houses because of unpaid debts. Now, that does tend to focus the mind, so actually only 16 evictions eventually took place, and we were able to reach settlement of the other cases. But it does show how important it is that people take early action to understand their debts, to manage those debts, and to keep their head above financial water. And the scale of the problem might be quite surprising. In Scotland at the moment, there are about 60,000 people going through either statutory debt relief or a statutory debt management product. That's a significant proportion of overall family numbers. And it is probably just the tip of the iceberg. The Scottish Household Survey suggests, the most recent one, that 1 in 5 Scottish households has no savings whatsoever. The ONS Wealth and Assets Survey, the most recent one, suggested that 10% of the overall population describe themselves as being in serious financial difficulties. There are all sorts of measures people try and put together to work out what percentage of the population we're talking about. My statisticians have done some analysis which suggests around about 370,000 people in Scotland could benefit from debt advice. In other words, they are already on the way that if they don't find ways of addressing those problems, they're going to be coming to my office. So hooray, plenty of work for me coming in the future. And I was told teachers like stories, whether that's right or not, I'm not sure. Because I started work in 1992, you can probably guess that I paid off my first flat in London. Imagine I bought a flat in London for £46,000, shows how old I am. My average mortgage rate over the life of that mortgage was 9%. My nephew, who's currently working in London, has never paid more than 2% on his mortgage because he's managed to move it from one deal to the next. We all know what's going to happen to interest rates in the next year or two. They're going to go up. How many people are going to be able to manage? Well, it depends how many of them actually understand how you add interest to balances. And I'm very glad that London Advice Service didn't use this statistic because in their Scottish financial strategy, they said that 1 in 3 people cannot work out the effect of adding interest to a balance. I find that staggering and very hard to believe. But that's what the stats show us. The stats show that 17% of people in Scotland could not find the balance on a bank statement. It's mind-blowing. 40% of people don't know how much money they have in their bank account to within £50. And I have to say I fall into that category, but I don't think I'm in financial difficulty. And that shouldn't really be surprising because we know about the cultural change. Another story, my partner, who's German and was brought up in a very strict German tradition, has never borrowed, I suppose I should say, a pfennig or a euro. We went to try and get her a mobile phone contract 2 years ago, and she wasn't allowed one because she had no history of successfully paying back credit. So we've had to take out some debt, purely so she could pay it back and she could get a mobile phone contract. Isn't that a strange world we live in? And the extent to which people are getting into financial difficulties is partly driven by that cultural change. Bank of England's latest figures came out in February, suggested I'm not very good at my billions and trillions, so it's £15,600 million is owed on credit cards in the UK, which is quite a bit. And when I see bankruptcy casework coming through, I see people who have maxed out one credit card, got another one, maxed out that credit card, got another one, maxed out that credit card, got another one. And you regularly see people with 10, 12 credit cards, all of which are right up to the maximum, try to hop them onto pre-balance transfers. When they can't, so take out another credit loan to pay off the interest on the first one, not realising the problem is getting worse and worse and worse. And a lot of you will recognise that, or at least those of you who see some of the impact on the families whose children you deal with. Some of the good news in this is that actually all of the numbers I've quoted are better in Scotland than they are in the rest of the UK. So we're doing something slightly better here. And you can probably tell by my accent I'm not a native of these parts. I was brought up in London. So perhaps I can make jokes about FIFAs, perhaps kind of lowering the average of indebtedness and being more prudent than maybe the majority of the population. But alongside that, we see an awful lot of evidence that there are a lot of people trying to take advantage of the lack of financial capability of the general population. We see numerous firms coming forwards with offerings that it is very hard to see are in people's best interest. In fact, I have a whole team down in Kilwinning whose job is to try and shut down misleading websites when they come up with claims. You've probably all seen claims that said, write off 80% of your debt, government-backed scheme. That would be a website we are trying to take down. So I won't say a great deal more at this point. You all know more about the importance of educating children and how best to do that than I do. But just to reflect, one of the other hats I wear is on a panel looking at bids from credit unions trying to run junior saver schemes. And again, there are people here who will know far more about this than I do. But junior saver schemes seem to work extremely well in primary schools. There's a lot of buy-in, children learn a lot of lessons, a lot of parental support, a lot of teacher involvement. When they get to secondary school, the numbers of those children who fall out of those schemes is very, very high. And it's one of the issues we're seeing about how we can address through some of the work with the junior saver schemes in the Scottish Government at the moment. But you will know, and I'm sure you will hear in the workshops, how best to get people back engaged in this, and how best to sell them the message of just how much this matters. I hope you have an enjoyable conference. Thank you.